Hello, and welcome back to Geek Week for Storycast Rob. This week I'll be posting a video every day talking about some of my great loves in pop culture. And today is a bit of a 2-for-1 because I want to talk about my love for MMOs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, and also the works of Tolkien, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and so forth. So this is Lord of the Rings Online. It is a game where you get to play in that world. And it is one I've spent a great many hours in. And I thought I'd take a tour through Middle-earth while I talk to you about my history with those books and quite what an impact they've had on my life. We're going to start here in the Troll Shores because I want to talk about The Hobbit. And The Hobbit is a kid's book by Tolkien, unlike Lord of the Rings, which is very much not a kid's book. The Hobbit is a book that I read at sort of age 10 and really enjoyed. Loved it. It wasn't actually the very first reaction I had to it. The early scenes with Gandalf and the dwarves with Bilbo were all just a bit weird. I mean, they were fun enough and they were quite odd. Have you ever noticed how many different colour hoods they are wearing in The Hobbit? But what really got me going with The Hobbit and what really set me off really enjoying The Hobbit was later on when the quest has started and they encounter these three trolls. These three trolls who foolishly decided to argue about how to cook dwarves and hobbits rather than getting out from the sun, which would turn them to stone. There we go. These are these fellows as realised in the game. There, big guy. Bit of a tactical error on your part, but we understand. But I love The Hobbit. I really do. And even later on, when I was at school, I did a quiz sort of based on Mastermind, and I got to speak about The Hobbit and did quite well, except that I hadn't finished my reread, so didn't remember the answer to what the Eagles did at the end. So having finished The Hobbit at age 10, I of course immediately went on to start The Lord of the Rings. But my relationship with that book is a little bit more complicated. As we ride up here in the Lone Lands towards Amundsul, known also as Weathertop, this is where I first encountered my first problem with the book The Lord of the Rings, because I have always had a good imagination, and that is as much a blessing as it is a curse, and I got to the part in The Lord of the Rings where the hobbits are fleeing from the Prancing Pony and Bree, get to Weathertop, and while Aragorn is off, Strider I guess back then, is off looking for it fell off. While the Strider is off looking for supplies and food, the hobbits foolishly light a fire and they get attacked by the Nazgul. The Nazgul, this big bad that's been chasing them all this time. And I just could not read that part of the book. I was terrified by it and actually had to get my dad to come and read to me that section of the story. Now, as an adult, I've gone back and read that. I've been brave enough to take it on by myself, and it lasts about 3 paragraphs. So I'm not quite sure why I got so fraught about it as a kid, but I did. So here we go, as we're coming up to the top of Weathertop. Yeah, The Lord of the Rings is an adult book. The Hobbit really is a kid's book, but The Lord of the Rings is a much more a grown-up book, much more grown-up themes. Sadly it's dark today, so I can't see. But back over that way, that's the marshes the hobbits crossed, and somewhere in that dim darkness there should be Bree, that way somewhere. So don't know why I got so scared about it, and actually it's a bit of a strange story point. The Nazgul are a really weird villain, because they are terrifying and powerful and weird. And this is the Lone Lands, the road to Osgiliath, and Rivendell's off in that direction somewhere. The Nazgul are these really terrifying villains, but Aragorn can fend off 5 of them with a burning branch. and, you know, eventually it just takes stabbing one in the face with a sword to kill them. It's all a bit strange. Anyway, so I wasn't going to talk about that, never mind. So yes, here we are, Weathertop, and my relationship, the start of Lord of the Rings. In fact, I didn't make it to the end of The Lord of the Rings, not at age 10 anyway, because Tolkien is great at creating world and world building and poems that I've never read. But the one thing that he's not a great action director. And while the big battles are really impressive when you see them in the movies, as a kid anyway, I found the slog of Two Towers just a little bit too much for me. Helm's Deep, which is where I am now, by the way, I'm wandering around the walls of Helm's Deep, was a thrilling battle in the movies, but in the books, for a 10-year-old, they were just a bit hard work. And I read The Fellowship of the Ring 3 or 4 times, I think, and made it at various points, various parts of the way through the Two Towers. But I never made it through to the end of Return of the King as a child. Never made it to the... Did I ever finish Two Towers? I'm not sure. I really can't remember. I have finished the books, of course. As a grown-up, when the films came out, I sat down and I was determined to finish reading them. And they are great. They are good for someone approaching them with a slightly more grown-up brain. But me, at age 10, they were just a bit of a slog. This is after the battle, I think, so the orcs have gone. Yeah, empty fields. So I like Tolkien. I am a fan of Middle-earth. But I've never read The Unfinished Tales, or even The Silmarillion, or even the appendices in Return of the King. Don't tell anyone. So I enjoy the world, I enjoy the books, I enjoy the films, but I am not necessarily a huge Tolkien head. So why have I chosen in Geek Week to talk about Lord of the Rings? Well, despite it not being my go-to franchise, we'll talk about that one tomorrow, it is probably the pop culture franchise which has had the biggest single effect on my life. And to tell you that story, I need to come here to Moria. This is an area of Moria within the game. It's what they call an instance, so it's a group event that is taking place in Moria, and this is a place called the Grand Stair. I don't think these are the Grand Stairs, but sort of this whole area is. And the Grand Stair is... Is it too dramatic to say this is the place my life changed? I don't know that if it is too dramatic to say that. Because it is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. It is a game where lots and lots of players can all play, and they can group up and do quests together. And it's fantastic. And sometimes you'll get a group go into a dungeon, into an instance, who are a bit under strength, and they get to a boss they can't beat. Sorry, this boss here is just having a conversation with himself. We'll let him do that. And sometimes you get halfway through a dungeon and you'll find a boss that you can't fight or you can't beat, and you can go off and look for someone else to come and assist you with that. And this happened to me on one occasion. Some friends of mine were playing the Grand Stair. They got stuck on the last boss. We're not going to get to the last boss in this little playthrough yet. And they said, Rob, come, we need help, quick. And so I brought along one of my captains, and I came into the Grand Stair, and I helped beat off the bad guys. I was the hero of the hour. I was the champion. I used my last stand skill and fought off the bad guy. Do you know, actually, speaking of fighting, let's fight off this bad guy. I haven't actually shown you the gameplay in action other than just wandering around, have I? He's disarmed me. There we go. Now he'll regret it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so Huzzah, one day fought with some people I'd never really met before, apart from my friend Ruby, who was a Finn. And she said, "Oh, do you know, there's one of the other players in this group is also a Finn. She's about your age. Perhaps you can talk to her." And I went, "Okay." And I said hello, and she said hello, and that was all fine. And the next day, I was back in the game again, and she was back in the game again. And I was a bit of a loose end what to do. I'd got plenty of characters, but no real idea what I wanted to play that day. And so I offered to give her some help. And this was back in the Lonelands near Weathertop, where we just were earlier. And we joined up together, and we started playing, and we played for 6 months, basically. Me and this Finnish woman played for 6 months together, pretty much non-stop. Every hour that we weren't at work and that our sleep cycles were more or less the same as each other, we played together. And then at the end of 6 months, she decided that she was going to come to London, where I was at the time, to do some Christmas shopping, and we decided that we would meet in the real world. Yes, this is how I met the woman who is now my wife. She is the reason that I now live in Finland, and this game, this world, therefore, has had a huge impact on my life. I like to tell people, because it's true, that when I first met my wife, I rescued her from a terrible, terrible monster. I say completely true. And when we met, she was a beautiful elven princess, and so was I, because video games. We're in Minas Tirith now. I'm standing next to Gandalf. He looks like he has a quest for me. That's why there's a quest ring on his head. That is the top of Minas Tirith, where Denethor throws himself to his death. Spoilers. So that really is my the end of my review of, or look back at Lord of the Rings Online and my relationship with Tolkien. I will be forever grateful to this franchise for what it brought into my life, how it changed my life. I will always have a huge fondness for it as a result, and for this game in particular. I've been playing Lord of the Rings Online for 10 years now, which is ridiculous, but I love it. So thanks again for joining me for Geek Week. I will be back tomorrow to tell you the tale of another franchise and its big effect on my life. Perhaps not quite as big as Lord of the Rings. If you want to see that, make sure you check out the playlist here. If you want to find out more about me as a writer, check out the playlist on the other side of the screen that I can't bother to point to. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.